The auction was almost over. The last lights flickered above the stage, and the crowd had thinned. All the cages were empty now, sold, dragged away by shouting buyers and greedy hands, except one. She sat in the shadows of the farthest cage, knees to her chest, her long silver hair covering her face. The auctioneer, a fat, lizard-like alien with gold rings on every finger, looked annoyed. He slapped his datapad and yelled, "Lot 117, final Bedini one." Silence. No one moved, no one even looked her way. A small alien boy whispered to his father, "Why is she still here?" The father pulled him close and said, "That's a cursed one. No value, not even worth feeding." The girl didn't react. She just stared down as if nothing around her mattered. The auctioneer shrugged. "All right then, waste of space. Shut it down." But then a voice came from the shadows, calm and deep. "I'll take her." The entire room froze. All heads turned toward the voice. A human stepped forward, dressed in a dusty brown jacket and black boots, face half covered by a hood. His eyes were calm, serious, and locked onto the girl's cage. "You sure about that, stranger?" the auctioneer asked, half laughing. "She's not like the others." I said, "I'll take her." The human repeated, his voice steady. The auctioneer blinked, then checked the tag. 1 unit, final bid. "Sold." He waved his hand. The cage door hissed open. Still, the girl didn't move. The human walked slowly to the cage, each step echoing through the hall. He stopped in front of her, bent down, and looked her in the eyes for the first time. She raised her head. Her face was pale blue, marked with soft, glowing lines across her cheeks and neck. Her eyes bright, violet, filled with quiet fire, met his, and in that moment she didn't look broken. She looked like a storm waiting to rise. He didn't flinch. He simply held out a hand. "Come on." She stared at him, unsure. No chains, no collar, no threats. Just a human offering his hand. Slowly, she reached out, fingers trembling, and took it. Gasps filled the room as she stepped out of the cage, barefoot and silent. The human turned and walked with her toward the exit, ignoring every stare. Behind them, whispers spread. Why would he take her? She's from the forbidden line. She'll kill him in his sleep, but he didn't stop walking. Outside, the sky was dark, full of stars and smoke from the ships that had come and gone. They walked in silence, the girl staying close, but not too close. Finally, the human stopped beside an old hoverbike and handed her a bottle of water. She took it with both hands, eyes still watching him. "Unsure? You got a name?" he asked gently. She said nothing, just sipped the water slowly. As if tasting it for the first time, he nodded. "All right, we'll work on that later." He handed her a blanket and helped her onto the back of the bike as they sped off into the cold night. The girl looked back at the auction house, now small, distant and disappearing. For the first time in a long time, she felt something strange. Not fear, not hate, but maybe hope. Still deep inside her, something else stirred too. Something ancient and locked away, and she knew this human had no idea what he had just taken, but she also knew she didn't want to run anymore. Not yet. The road out of the city was dark, filled with wind and dust. The human rode the hoverbike without speaking, and the alien girl held onto the edge of the seat, not touching him, not trusting him yet. They didn't stop until they reached a small cave deep in the rocks, hidden under broken trees and dried vines. There was no light around them except the stars above. He helped her down and pointed to a small fire pit already prepared with dry wood. He lit the fire, and the soft glow danced across her skin, revealing the lines that ran down her arms and neck. Glowing faintly like soft lightning trapped under her skin, she sat quietly. Her knees pulled to her chest again, watching him. Not with fear, but like someone waiting to see if the next blow would come. He passed her a piece of dried food and a blanket, then sat on the other side of the fire. Keeping a distance, "You don't talk much," he said. Not expecting a reply, she looked at him, then shook her head slowly. "Don't trust me?" he asked. She nodded. Slowly this time, not out of fear, but truth. He smiled a little. "Not offended, just tired." "I'm not here to own you," he said. "I just didn't want to leave you in that cage." She didn't respond, but something in her chest ached. A feeling she didn't understand, like warm confusion in the distance. A deep hum echoed through the rock-sand old patrol drone passing nearby. The human stood quickly and turned off the firelight with a quiet wave of his hand. He pulled her closer under a rocky ledge. Placing a finger over his lips, she followed without a word. Staying low, her body pressed tight against the wall. The drone passed overhead, its lights scanning the ground like a hunting animal, but it didn't stop. And soon the hum faded into the night. The girl looked up at the human in the darkness, barely lit by the stars, and whispered her first word, soft and small. "Why?" He blinked, surprised, then lowered his voice and replied, "Why? What? Why did you take me?" He didn't answer right away, then said, "Because no one else did." She stared at him for a long moment, her glowing eyes reflecting the stars. Then she turned away and curled under the blanket, but her body no longer looked so tense. The next morning, the human woke up early, collecting small supplies from his bag, old parts, wires, a broken radio, and a half-working heater. She watched him quietly, eyes half closed, pretending to sleep. He built a shelter wall from fallen metal scraps nearby, giving her a little more cover from the cold wind. She didn't ask him to, and he didn't explain why. Later that day, as they ate beside the fire, she reached out and touched one of his tools, her fingers running across it carefully. He looked up and said, "You know how to fix things." She gave a tiny nod, her fingers already starting to unscrew a small panel. For the first time, he smiled fully. A real smile. "Good," he said, "because I'm a terrible mechanic." That night, the wind howled louder than before, and they sat closer to the fire. The human leaned back, staring up at the stars, while the girl sat beside him, a little closer than before. He looked at her and asked, "What do they call you?" She hesitated, then whispered, "EI." He nodded. "Nice to meet you, Etchy." She blinked. Surprised, he said it like she was a person, not a burden, just someone. Then she whispered back, "What's your name?" He replied, "Jaren." That night, as Iya closed her eyes, she dreamed for the first time in years, but far away, in a dark city of metal and smoke, a screen lit up in red. A new bounty was posted. Target: A reward. Alive only, no damage. Below that was another line. Warning: do not harm the child. The message was sent to every hunter in 3 systems, and it would not take long before someone found their trail. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and Jaren's shelter crackled with quiet energy as morning came. Elia was awake before him, crouched beside the fire pit, her eyes scanning the horizon as if she felt something moving in the wind. She didn't speak, but her body was tense. Jaren noticed it too. Something had changed in the air. Birds were no longer singing. Without a word, Ia rose and walked behind the shelter into the thicket of silver-leaf trees. Jaren followed her, boots silent on the ground. She moved quickly, but carefully, as if she already knew the path. Soon they reached a pile of broken rocks near a sharp ridge. Overgrown with moss and vines, Iya knelt beside it and placed her hand on a smooth stone. Jaren watched as a small panel clicked open, revealing a hidden chamber, no bigger than a suitcase. Inside was a pod, barely alive, dim lights blinking red. Weak and cold, Iya reached in, and her fingers brushed against a small form wrapped in cloth. A child. Jaren's eyes widened. The child looked just like her. Smaller, frailer, with the same glowing lines under its skin. Its lips were blue, breath shallow. Ia didn't speak. She only lifted the child and hugged it tight to her chest, her arms shaking. Then she looked at Jaren, eyes no longer guarded, but full of something raw and desperate. She needed help. Jaren stepped forward, took off his coat, and wrapped the child gently, cradling it in his arms. "It's freezing," he said. "We need heat, now." They rushed back to the shelter, and Jaren fired up the old power cell he'd been saving. Connecting it to the small heater with shaking hands, Aya placed the child inside the warmest spot, wrapping more blankets around it for the first time. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silently. She had never cried in front of anyone, not even when captured, not even in the cage. But now she couldn't stop. Jaren didn't ask questions. He just knelt beside her and whispered, "We'll keep her alive. I swear." Hours passed slowly. The child's breathing steadied, her skin warming slightly under the blankets. Aya never left her side, her hand resting gently on the child's head. Jaren finally sat down, leaning against the wall, tired and quiet. He looked at Ei and said, "Is she your sister?" Aya shook her head, then paused and whispered, "No. My daughter." Jaren's breath caught, but he said nothing, only gave a small nod. Aya looked down, her voice barely a breath. "I gave her away before they could take her, hid her in the mountains. I didn't know if she was still alive." Jaren listened, saying nothing, letting her speak at her pace. "I had no name," she said, "but I gave her one Sira." The child stirred a little under the blanket, her small, glowing eyes blinking once before closing again. Why did they want her? Jaren finally asked. Aya looked at him, and for a second, the firelight caught the old pain in her expression. "She was born with a gift," she said, "a very old one. Something they lost long ago." Jaren narrowed his eyes. "Who's they?" Yay. Didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Not bandits, not slavers. Something far worse. Outside, the wind picked up. But another sound mixed into it, a mechanical buzz, distant but steady. Jaren stood quickly and stepped outside, scanning the sky far above. A small black drone hovered for a second, then zipped away. He returned inside with urgency in his voice. "We've been seen." Ia didn't flinch. She just wrapped Sarah tighter, ready to run again. Jaren looked at them both, then at the sky, and muttered, "They'll come tonight." But something else was growing inside him now. Not just the urge to protect, it was anger. The kind that only rises when someone sees innocence hunted like prey. And he knew this wasn't just about a girl in a cage anymore. This was about something much bigger, and he had already stepped too far to turn back. The mountains were silent. But Jaren's instincts screamed louder than the wind. He had fought in wars before, seen ambushes, smelled traps, but nothing made his skin crawl like this kind of quiet. He packed fast, every motion tight and sharp, tossing old supplies into a worn pack, double-checking power cells. Grabbing the rifle he'd hoped never to use again, Egg stayed by her daughter, her eyes never leaving Sira's sleeping face. The child's breathing now steady but shallow. Jaren looked at Ei. "We can't stay here." She didn't argue, just nodded and rose to her feet. Sira wrapped gently in her arms. They moved quickly through the ridge trails, heading west, away from the drone path. Sticking to thick brush and shadowed rocks, the sun dipped low behind the cliffs, painting the sky in blood-orange streaks. Jaren stopped once to check the scanner on his wrist, and the signal was clear to clear. He didn't like that, they found. Shelter in an old tunnel entrance, half buried in sand and forgotten by most maps. Ei looked uneasy. "What is this place?" "Mining tunnels," Jaren said, voice low. abandoned after the poison veins cracked. "No one comes here anymore, except us," she whispered, and they stepped inside. The tunnel walls pulsed faintly with old tech, dead circuits, and rusted supports. Jaren led them deep, setting up a small glow lamp and a thermal blanket for Sierra. But something tugged at the back of his mind. Then he saw it: footprints. Not old, not theirs. They weren't alone. His voice dropped. "Get behind me, Ek." Ia obeyed without hesitation, clutching Sierra close as Jaren raised his weapon and moved forward. Each step echoing through the dark metal corridor. A sharp click echoed behind him. Then, another someone was already waiting. Jaren ducked just in time. A plasma bolt flew overhead and struck the wall. Sending sparks in every direction, he rolled forward, fired once, twice, hitting one shadow that dropped to the floor with a thud. But more were coming, boots slamming against steel. Orders shouted in a harsh alien tongue. Ia crouched behind an old crate, shielding her daughter. Her breath shaking, but her eyes burning with fire. Jaren shouted, "Stay down," as another blast grazed his arm. Leaving smoke and searing pain, he gritted his teeth and pulled a flash canister from his belt. Tossing it down the corridor, it exploded with a blinding white burst, and he rushed in, dropping 2 more enemies in quick bursts of fire. Then, silence. Just his breathing. Loud and rough in the stale air, he returned to Ei, blood on his sleeve. Face pale, but standing strong. She looked at him like she was seeing something new. He wasn't just some kind man with a broken past. He was a soldier. "You were trained," she whispered. Jaren gave a tired nod. "Yeah, Earth's military." "No," he said. Voice flat, Black Star Division, off-world contracts. Dirty jobs. Ia didn't speak, but her gaze softened just a little. He wasn't what he appeared. She looked at his wound, tried to press cloth against it, but he gently pushed her hand away. "We need to move again." "No," she said. Firm this time. "They'll chase us forever." "You know that?" Jaren looked at her, at the child still sleeping under the old blanket. "And then back down the dark tunnel. Then we stop running," he said. "We hit back." Ia didn't argue this time. In the corner of the tunnel, behind the wreckage of a broken loader machine, she uncovered something: an old control panel, almost dead, but not fully. She placed her glowing fingers against it, and it came alive. Ancient symbols blinking faintly on the screen. Jaren stared, stunned. "What did you just do?" Her voice was quiet but steady. "This tunnel belongs to my people. Long ago, before the syndicate stole the land." "Is it a weapon?" he asked. "No," she said, touching the screen. "It's a memory. And maybe a message." Behind them, the wind outside began to howl louder than before. But deep in the tunnel, something had awakened. A humming sound rose from the floor, and the lights flickered back to life, one by one. Jaren didn't know what was coming next, but he was sure of one thing. He wasn't leaving them behind. Not now, not ever. The tunnel lights stayed dim, flickering like fireflies trapped in glass. But something new moved through the air, an ancient vibration, low and deep, like a memory waking up after centuries of silence. Jaren stood still, gun lowered but ready. Eyes locked on Ei as she moved, like she knew the place, like her feet remembered what her mind did not. She walked slowly across the dust-covered floor, stopping in front of a large, sealed door, buried halfway in stone and old metal, without speaking. She reached out and pressed her hand against a faded symbol, 3 intersecting rings. Glowing faintly under her touch, the door groaned, trembled, then slowly opened. Beyond it was a small chamber lit by soft blue light. Walls curved in a way that wasn't human design. Smooth, elegant, alive. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and on it rested something wrapped in aged cloth, long, slender, and humming quietly. Jaren stepped in behind her, slow, cautious, "What is this place?" Iya didn't answer right away. Her voice came only after a long pause, soft and full of weight. "My ancestors built this place." Before they were hunted, she stepped closer to the pedestal and removed the cloth, revealing a weapon not sharp like a sword, not cold like a gun, but something else. It pulsed with the same glow as the lines on her skin, the same color as Syrah's heartbeat when she slept. Jaren stared at it, unsure. "That's not tech I've seen before." Iya picked it up, and the lights in the room brightened slightly. Like they recognized her. "It's not for war," she said. "It's for protection." Jaren tilted his head. "From what?" She looked at him now, eyes filled with quiet fire. From them, outside, the wind stopped. A sound like thunder rolled in its place. Engines, many low-flying ships approaching fast. Jaren ran back to the scanner, saw the blips on the map. "Closing in, they found us," he said. "And this time, they brought everything." Ei didn't flinch. Instead, she walked to Syrah, who was still sleeping, and knelt down beside her, whispering something in a language Jaren didn't know. Syrah. Stirred eyes fluttered open and, this time. They glowed not faintly, but bright, steady, focused. The child sat up slowly, not afraid, just quiet and curious. As if she too could feel the shift in the air. Jaren locked eyes with Iya. "We can't fight them all." Iya looked calm, more calm than she had ever been. "We don't have to," he frowned. "Then what do we do?" "We show them," she said, "what they tried to erase." As the ships landed outside the canyon, dozens of armed figures spread out, black armor, cold faces. Rifles humming with charged plasma. "The Syndicate," a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Return the child and the girl, and the human may walk free." Jaren almost laughed at the offer, but instead he looked at Ei. "What's the plan?" She stepped into the open, cradling Syrah in her arms, the ancient weapon slung across her back like it had always belonged there. Jaren followed her, rifle ready but low. Heart pounding with every step, the soldiers raised their guns, ready to fire. Then Syrah lifted her hand. The air pulsed with silent energy, gentle, but heavy like gravity, shifting. One by one, the Syndicate guns clicked uselessly, lights flickering off, power cells dead. Then the ground itself began to glow under their feet, ancient lines of energy rising like roots from the earth, surrounding the soldiers, making them stop, look, hesitate. Ei's voice rang out clear, strong. "You hunted us, caged us, called us worthless. But this child holds more power in her breath than your entire empire." The soldiers didn't move, didn't shoot. Some of them began to step back. Slowly, Jaren stood beside them, watching. Understanding now that this wasn't just a rescue. It was a beginning. The Syndicate wouldn't stop. But they would remember this moment the day. A forgotten girl, her child, and one human made them pause. Not with violence, but with truth. And that was more dangerous than any weapon. The stars returned to the sky like quiet witnesses, blinking down as the Syndicate forces retreated into the shadows. No shots were fired, no blood spilled, but something had changed in the air. They didn't win through battle. They won through something older, something the Syndicate didn't understand and that terrified them more than guns ever could. EA carried Syrah back into the tunnel without speaking. The child was calm, but her eyes still glowed faintly. Like something inside her had finally opened. Jaren stayed outside for a moment, staring at the hills, half expecting another attack. Another lie, another twist, but none came. Just silence and the cold wind brushing against his face when he returned. Inside, he found EA sitting near the old pedestal, the weapon resting beside her like it belonged there. Syrah lay asleep again, peaceful and warm. "She's changing," IE whispered, her eyes fixed on the child. "Is it dangerous?" Jaren asked, crouching beside her. Iya shook her head. Not to us, but to them. Yes. Jaren leaned back, the walls humming faintly around him. What is she? Really? Iya was quiet for a long time. Then she said, she's the last echo of something they arrest of people who could connect to the living energy of this world, like magic. He asked, half joking. Iya gave a small smile. Your kind calls it that, but for us, it was life. Thought, breath. He nodded slowly, eyes falling to the sleeping child. And they feared it? They still do. She replied, because they couldn't control it. Jaren exhaled, then looked at her. And you? Can you do what she did? No, she said, not anymore. Her fingers touched the lines on her arm. Glowing softly under her skin, they doled it in us, crushed it with chemicals. Collars, fear but zero was born clean. Jaren stayed quiet, letting her speak. Without pressure, and now that she's awakened it, they'll never stop coming. He glanced toward the entrance, then back to her. Then we make them stop. Ei looked at him, really looked. Why are you still here, Jaren? He hesitated, then said, because I don't want to be the kind of man who walks away anymore. Ei didn't respond, but something in her eyes softened again. A flicker of trust, maybe more. Later that night, a tremor ran through the ground, small but sharp, shaking dust from the ceiling. Jaren reached for his weapon, but Eja stood calmly, walking toward the tunnel's far end. Something's calling, she whispered. He followed her deeper into the forgotten parts of the ruin, the walls glowing faintly with each step they took. They came to another chamber, untouched by time. At its center stood a large circular platform, cracked but still alive, pulsing like a heartbeat. Iya placed her hand on it, and a surge of images flooded the room. Made of light, floating and shifting, Jaren gasped, seeing ancient cities rise and fall in seconds, towering trees that glowed under blue suns, creatures that floated through the sky like living songs. But then came the fire, the syndicate, the burning, the cages, and then nothing. Silence. Iya stumbled back, breathing hard, eyes wet. That's what they destroyed, she said. Not just people but memory. Jaren looked around the chamber, fists clenched. Then we take it back. No, she said. We pass it on. The images faded, but the platform glowed stronger, reacting to her presence and then to Syrah's. The child had followed quietly, her eyes wide, stepping into the light without fear. As soon as she touched the edge, the room brightened, and the air shimmered with energy. Symbols began etching themselves into the walls, language, knowledge, songs, names. Jaren looked around, stunned. She's restoring it. Eya knelt beside her, voice shaking. She's becoming the archive. Jaren took a slow step forward, feeling warmth on his skin, hope in the light. For the first time in his life, he wasn't fighting for orders or credits or survival. He was fighting for something real, something worth protecting until his last breath. The world outside had changed. Jaren could feel it in the wind, hear it in the quiet hum beneath the ground, see it in the way Iya and Syrah moved like they were no longer running, but returning to something that had always been theirs. Word of what happened in the canyon had already spread. Whispers across channels, pirate relays, resistance circles, even syndicate ears. They called it impossible, a child stopping weapons with her mind, an outlawed species making machines fail. A forgotten ruin glowing with power again, but the whispers didn't stop it. They only made more people listen. More people looked toward the stars with questions they'd buried. The syndicate didn't wait long. 3 days later, a fleet appeared on the horizon. No bounty hunters this time, no scouts or thugs. This was a warship, full force. Jaren stood at the mouth of the canyon with a rifle on his back and a blade at his side, his coat whipping in the wind. He didn't move when the ships lowered, didn't flinch when the ground shook under their landing gear. Behind him, the chamber pulsed stronger than ever, its energy building with each passing second. Iya stood beside Sira now, her hand on the child's shoulder. Guiding, anchoring, Sira's eyes were steady, glowing like twin stars, not with fear, but with peace. Joran glanced at them once, just to be sure, and then turned to face the syndicate. The ground troops marched forward, black armor gleaming, weapons ready, faces unreadable. A tall figure stepped out first, a commander with silver skin and deep violet eyes. "You have something that belongs to us," he said, cold and sharp. "No," Joran replied. "You lost something you never understood. You're outnumbered," the commander said, raising his hand. "This is your final warning." Joran gave a small shrug. "Then fire." The commander hesitated, sensing something was wrong. Joran took a slow step forward, placing a small, blinking beacon on the ground. It wasn't a bomb, not a weapon, but a signal. Deep underground, the chamber walls lit up fully, and Sira stepped into the center of the circle again, her tiny hands spread wide. The air trembled, not violently, but with deep resonance across the valley. Ancient roots lit up under the soil, pulsing with golden energy. The warship engines sputtered once, then died. Power failing, soldiers looked around in panic. There comes silent, rifles frozen, unable to fire, and then voices rose, not loud, but everywhere at once, not just EA's people, but other hidden ones, long forgotten. Speaking in tongues older than time, the syndicate soldiers began to drop their weapons, one by one. Not out of fear, but because they finally understood. This wasn't war, this was truth. The commander took a step back, then another, confusion in his eyes. What is she?" he whispered. Joran answered calmly. "She's the future you tried to erase." The commander turned and fled, the fleet lifting off without a fight, disappearing into the sky like cowards who saw a storm and turned away when the dust settled. Silence returned. Joran stood still, watching the empty sky, then turned to see Sara walking toward him, Iya close behind. The child reached up, placed her hand in his, and smiled. Joran knelt beside her, eyes soft, voice low. "You okay, kid?" Sara nodded once, then said, "We're not alone anymore." That night, the chamber doors stayed open, and people began to arrive, not syndicate, but wanderers, exiles, other lost souls who had nothing left to follow except the light. EIA welcomed them quietly, guiding them to warmth and safety. Joran helped build shelters with salvaged parts, his hands steady, his back strong. Sara ran through the glowing hallways, laughing for the first time, her joy echoing like music through the stone. No one called her property again. No one dared. She was not a prisoner, not a weapon, not a thing. She was a child. And thanks to one human who refused to walk away, she had a home, not just for herself, but for all of them.